As Leavonne was walking around the construction site supervising the work progress, he suddenly saw two strangers approaching his young subordinate. Without saying a word, he grabbed a bucket full of nails nearby and warned them to stop. Instead, the thugs not only didn't stop but also turned around and cursed at Leavonne, calling him a bald head, mind your own business. Then one of them punched the young man in the face, causing his nose to bleed. Unable to tolerate their arrogance, Leavonne threw all the nails at the two men. One swung his fist, but Leavonne easily dodged it by tilting his head. Then Leavonne slammed the bucket down hard on his head. The second man rushed forward to help his teammate, but Leavonne kicked him backward. Another immediately grabbed an axe and swung it at Leavonne, but he was subdued. Although these two men had guns, they were no match for Leavonne. They naively didn't know that he was a former Special Forces operative. He had decades of combat experience in the midst of bombs and bullets. Therefore, even when his accomplices arrived as reinforcements, Leavonne wasn't intimidated. He immediately drew his gun and threatened them to leave before he pulled the trigger. Although furious, they left knowing they were no match for him. In the past, due to the death of his wife, Leavonne decided to retire and become an ordinary person. Because of his close relationship with the family of the project contractor, he was promoted from a construction worker to a project manager. He thought he would have a new life. However, circumstances always pushed him into fighting situations. The recent fight had been witnessed by Jenny, the director's daughter. She approached him and looked at him admiringly. She didn't forget to praise him for taking them down in less than a minute. A lightning-fast action with no wasted movements. Truly, the style of a Special Forces soldier. But Leavonne told her not to tell anyone about it because he didn't want to get into any more trouble. She happily agreed with him, and they both made gestures to keep the matter a secret. After finishing work, Leavonne drove to visit his daughter, who was currently living with her maternal grandfather. After Leavonne's wife's death, her father had gained custody of her. Leavonne was only allowed to visit his daughter once a week. However, today was his daughter's birthday, and he didn't want to miss such a meaningful day. But his father-in-law absolutely refused. He was very angry and blamed Leavonne, claiming that his daughter Meredith's death was caused by Leavonne's constant absences on special missions, which led to her depression. Now, Leavonne was no longer worthy to be with his daughter. Fortunately, Lily, his daughter, still loved him very much. So, as soon as she saw him, she happily ran to hug him and climbed into the car. She knew that her maternal grandfather hated her father. That's why Lily was so upset and always tried to comfort Leavonne. They happily spent time together at a restaurant to celebrate her birthday. He gave her a gift, a photo of his wife and daughter. He thought she would be happy, but she said she had forgotten what her mother looked like. Leavonne, alarmed, asked why, and she replied that her grandfather had taken down all the photos and put them away. Furthermore, she said she hated her mother because her mother had heartlessly abandoned them. Hearing this, his face became unusually serious. Leavonne realized that Lily living with her grandfather and not receiving parental love had caused her to have distorted thoughts and become depressed. He decided to fight for custody of his daughter at all costs. He then sought advice from a lawyer. According to reports, Leavonne's father-in-law refused custody, citing his violent and unstable mental state. In the past, Leavonne has always faced violence and danger. Upon leaving the military, he struggled to adapt to normal life. His wife's family believed he couldn't provide a stable life for Lily. Worse still, his visitation hours were reduced from once a week to once every 2 weeks. Since he was still homeless, sleeping in his car, and earning only 5 million VND a month, he was certain to lose any lawsuit. Leavonne's father-in-law was a powerful figure with a team of highly skilled lawyers. They advised Leavonne to temporarily accept the situation. He followed their advice and tried to rent a dilapidated apartment. He no longer had to sleep in his car and had a fixed place to live. This increased his chances of winning the case, as the court, considering Leavonne's financial situation, would have more grounds to allow him to see Lily more often. As night fell, Jenny and her friends went to a city bar to celebrate reaching the legal drinking age. The security guard carefully checked the girls' IDs and happily let them inside. The girls partied hard in the bar, as young people love a lively atmosphere. But little did they know that a disaster was lurking right before their eyes. While the girls were dancing, a mysterious man was filming them, and they planned to kidnap Jenny. Because she was the prettiest in the group, they took advantage of the moment she went to the restroom. One of them suddenly jumped out, covered her mouth, dragged her into a dark alley, and drove away in a car. The next morning, Leavonne arrived at the construction site as usual and saw 2 police officers coming out of his boss's office. This made him feel uneasy. Opening the door and stepping inside, he received news that Jenny had disappeared the night before. Her parents had called her repeatedly without success, so they reported it to the police. However, the police believed that less than 24 hours had passed since her disappearance, so they only filed a report and left. Feeling utterly helpless, the family pleaded with Leavonne for help. Having witnessed him easily take down 5 or 6 thugs. He politely declined, saying he was retired and his bloody past held no relevance. Undeterred, the couple offered him $50,000 to rescue their daughter, promising an additional $20,000 if she returned safely. Leavonne, usually unconcerned with material things, was now conflicted by the situation. He needed the money for legal fees and to support his daughter. Having children of his own, he fully understood Jenny's parents' predicament. After some hesitation, he agreed to help. That same afternoon, he drove for hours to meet his former teammate, Dante, hoping for his assistance to increase their chances of success. However, after a brief conversation, Dante revealed that he could barely distinguish between day and night anymore. Therefore, helping Leavonne was impossible. Leavonne felt guilty for not being able to save Dante's eyesight before, but Dante said Leavonne didn't need to blame himself because Leavonne had saved his life. In truth, Leavonne was still quite hesitant about this rescue mission, but when Leavonne arrived at Jenny's house, he witnessed her father's distraught state of worry. Her father kept looking at the video of her playing the piano and praying to God for her safe return home. For a moment, Leavonne recalled the time when his wife had passed away. Only his family was there for him and always trusted him, so now they were his second family. The next morning, Leavonne followed the information he had received and went to investigate the bar where Jenny had disappeared. He disguised himself as a customer sitting behind the counter and observed. Leavonne noticed the bartender acting very strangely. He was giving customers small bags of powder. It was drugs. This seemingly ordinary bar was secretly involved in illegal drug trafficking. Leavonne stood up to check his surroundings and realized the security camera had been deliberately damaged. He took a picture as evidence. Then he followed the alley and found one of Jenny's earrings lying on the ground. Waiting until the bartender got into his car to go home, Leavonne followed him. At this point, the bartender was high on drugs. Leavonne opened the door and stepped inside before the bartender could reach for the handgun on the table. Instead, Leavonne pointed a long-barreled AK-47 at him, immobilizing him. Then Leavonne calmly sat down in front of him. Leavonne showed him a picture of Jenny and asked where she was. Perhaps unaware of Leavonne's power, Rico lied, saying he had already told the police. It was all her fault for getting drunk and running away. Leavonne then submerged Rico in a water bath until he confessed to the organization behind it. He said that the people behind it were very dangerous. They were on a different level, one that even the American security services wouldn't dare touch. Just as Leavonne demanded their names, 2 of his accomplices entered. Leavonne took Rico hostage, but as soon as he opened the door, he was ambushed by the 2 men. He quickly fired a shot straight into their hearts. While examining their bodies, he noticed Russian mafia tattoos on their chests. Although he didn't know Jenny's whereabouts yet, at least Leavonne now had a clue to continue his investigation. After taking all the money from the 3 men, he returned to his car to monitor the situation. Later, a luxury car arrived. The person who stepped out was Vidas, the drug and arms dealer. He was also the mastermind behind this kidnapping. Upon entering the room and seeing his subordinate dead, his expression immediately changed. His money was gone too. Vidas, annoyed, angrily confronted his 2 companions to avoid trouble. He called his staff to clean up the scene and then drove away. Leavonne quickly followed his car. They stopped in front of a villa in the woods. To avoid detection, Leavonne took out his backpack containing the gun and went around to the back of the house to observe. Inside, Vidas and his wife were talking normally when suddenly he raised his hand and hit her. He cursed, saying women should talk less. After the woman got into the car and drove away, Leavonne sneaked into the house despite the security cameras pointing at him. As soon as Vidas turned around, Leavonne threw a coffee pot at him and punched him in the face, sending him tumbling to the ground. Leavonne calmly ate a freshly baked pastry and waited for him to regain consciousness. At this point, Vidas was tied to a chair with his mouth taped shut. Immediately, Leavonne threatened to push him into the indoor swimming pool. He showed no fear and challenged Leavonne, saying, "Do you know who I am?" Leavonne slapped him a few times before replying. Leavonne said he knew they were Russian terrorists involved in illegal activities. Vidas told Leavonne that if he died there today, his men would hunt down Leavonne's entire family for 3 generations. But Leavonne seemed unconcerned, which angered him and made him curse. Seeing his stubbornness, Leavonne slapped him to punish him for daring to hit a woman. Vidas realized Leavonne did all this because of a woman, so he cursed even more. Despite Vidas's pleas, Leavonne pushed him into the swimming pool. Through Vidas's testimony, Leavonne learned that this incident also involved a man named Dimmy, so Leavonne left to hunt for information about him. After Vidas's death, his accomplices could not ignore it. Another high-ranking member of the gang, Petro, arrived to inspect the house. He was a mysterious figure, even higher in rank than Vidas within the underground organization. Petro was a cunning man. After reviewing the security camera footage, he concluded that the intruder was no ordinary person. This individual was a ruthless killer, a true demon. Question was, who killed Vidas, and for what purpose? But what was undeniable was that Vidas's son was Dimmy, indirectly responsible for his father's death. Petro immediately ordered his 2 henchmen to hunt down Leavonne and bring him here. After Jenny was kidnapped and locked in the damp basement, she tried to untie herself. Suddenly, a woman with her face covered entered and offered Jenny food. Jenny thought the kidnappers had taken the wrong person, as her parents were kind and had never made enemies. She hoped they would release her. However, before she could finish her sentence, the woman raised a gun, threatening her to be quiet and eat. Otherwise, she would shoot Jenny dead immediately. Jenny had no choice but to obey. To track down Denny's identity, Leavonne contacted his former teammate, now a civil servant. But when Leavonne asked for his help, he readily assisted. When he learned who Leavonne was looking for, he was extremely surprised, because he understood that Leavonne had just gotten involved with a high-level criminal gang. He explained that they not only had power in the underworld, but also held many important positions in the government. Therefore, Leavonne needed to think carefully before acting. From what he had provided, Leavonne learned that Denny was the owner of the bar where Jenny went missing. They specialized in selling drugs and stimulants to Russian criminals. At the end of the call, he didn't forget to wish Leavonne good luck. When night fell, Leavonne disguised himself as a customer at Denny's bar, arriving on a motorcycle to avoid attracting attention. The waitress noticed Leavonne was new and found him suspicious, so she discreetly alerted the control room staff. She suspected him of being a police officer undercover, having spotted his handgun on the infrared scanner. Immediately, the man with the black beard approached Leavonne, intending to warn him. However, Leavonne was prepared. He placed a wad of money on the table and pretended he wanted to buy some drugs for his subordinates. Then, the man led him to the VIP area to meet the manager. But the man suspected Jenny was a police officer and ordered his henchmen to surround Leavonne. However, these burly men were no match for Leavonne. He took down several bodyguards with his bare hands. Another man swung a metal bar at him, but Leavonne dodged it. He immediately took the bull's head hanging from the ceiling and struck each of them with it. Suddenly, one of them grabbed Leavonne's neck from behind, but Leavonne twisted his arm and broke it, causing the bones to crack and shatter. Before all the henchmen were subdued, the black man raised his hand and told Jenny to stop, saying, "Tell me what you want." To show goodwill, he shook Leavonne's hand. He apologized for suspecting Jenny of being a police officer. This rough hand showed that Jenny was a worker, not a cop. Leavonne said, "I used to be a special forces soldier." This statement greatly intrigued the black man, as he himself had been in the Air Force. He became more amiable and asked why Leavonne had come to buy drugs there instead of elsewhere. Leavonne quickly explained that the drug supply from Chicago was experiencing delays and his addicts couldn't wait. Time was money, so he acted like a professional drug dealer. Leavonne negotiated the price down from $7,000 to $5,000. From his tone of voice to his gaze, Leavonne made the black man truly believe that his purpose in coming there was to buy drugs. Leavonne was a key member of the Special Forces. He was knowledgeable about weapons and the tricks of illegal gamblers. Weapons and drugs were nothing new to him, so he easily outsmarted them. After agreeing on the price, the black man arranged a time and place for the delivery. At exactly 7 a.m. the next day, he arrived at the agreed address. Upon entering, he saw the woman and the black man from the previous night. As he sat down, the woman opposite him pointed a gun at him and demanded to see the money first. After confirming the money was sufficient, she threw him a black and white phone. The phone contained the address and contact information for him to pick up the goods. Leavonne immediately warned them both, saying they'd better not mess with him. He didn't want to end up shooting each of them in the head. While driving, he received a call from the black man saying the goods had been delivered. Actually, during the transaction at the restaurant, they had already sent someone to plant a pile of methamphetamine under his seat. He immediately drove to a river in the suburbs and dumped all the drugs into the river. After finishing the transaction with Leavonne, the black man and the woman drove to the house of the perverted billionaire. There, they handed Jenny over to him. When the woman asked why he wanted to kidnap Jenny, he said it was because Jenny resembled the woman in the painting. He was truly a pervert. When he checked to see if Jenny was still alive to do something dirty, she suddenly bit off his hand. He immediately ran out, cursing at the man and demanding that he deal with her. Because many days had passed without any news of Jenny, Leavonne was very worried. While he was sorting through the information, he received an offer from the black man from before. He recognized Leavonne as a potential client, so he arranged a private meeting with his boss, Jenny. Leavonne immediately agreed. The next day, Leavonne went to a hotel designated by Jenny. Surrounded by their henchmen, Leavonne couldn't afford to be careless while sitting opposite Demi. Demi demanded Leavonne show his driver's license for his accomplices to verify his identity. Of course, Leavonne had prepared beforehand, so the documents he gave them were fake. The name William was also fake, but the henchmen couldn't find any loopholes in Leavonne's identity, so he told Demi that Leavonne was very trustworthy. In the second transaction, Leavonne still let them take the money. He then disposed of all the methamphetamine in the toilet. Back home, he searched for the phone Recon had used to film Jenny. Their group discovered that the black-haired man and the other woman were definitely possibly involved in Jenny's kidnapping. He stopped his car in a bush near the bar from the previous day to observe further. Unfortunately for him, she had an infrared detector. She detected his presence and called for his men to arrest him. Realizing the danger, he stole a nearby motorcycle and fled. A short while later, they caught up and fired at Leavonne, but he managed to dodge the bullets. Two cars relentlessly pursued his motorcycle. Although traveling by car was more difficult than on an off-road motorcycle, the mafia kept close and continued to fire at him. When he was blocked from both sides, he turned onto a small trail and escaped. The men in the cars were helpless and let him get away. At that moment, the cars swerved, causing Leavonne to crash into a police car. He thought he would be rescued by the police, but he didn't realize that the mafia had bribed the local authorities and the police were working under these Russian criminals. Leavonne was knocked unconscious by one of them. They dragged him into the back of a car and escorted him to the boss, Petro. Two of the henchmen recognized Leavonne as the one who killed Vitas in the pool and asked how he knew Dimi. Taking advantage of their distraction, Leavonne kicked them hard, sending them staggering. One of them grabbed him from behind, but Leavonne knocked him unconscious with an elbow. The driver slammed on the brakes, causing one of the men to lunge at him. Leavonne immediately grabbed a rope, looped it around the man's neck, and tightened it. The other man held Leavonne at gunpoint, but accidentally pulled the trigger, killing the driver. The car lost control and veered towards the riverbank. The people inside continued fighting. Leavonne, with lightning speed, grabbed his gun and fired. He untied himself and escaped, pushing the car into the river. In the morgue, Petro was mourning his two unfortunate henchmen. He was furious and determined to capture Leavonne to avenge those who had died. But first, he would confront Dimi. In the bar, Dimi was disciplining two of his henchmen for angering his client. The man with the black beard and the woman were tasked with keeping Jenny in check, but she injured his client, enraging him. He threatened to cut off her hand to vent his anger, but ultimately spared them and ordered them to deal with Jenny in a VIP room of the restaurant. Five bosses, the top leaders, were discussing the situation, having witnessed the deaths of many of their subordinates in recent days. They realized the man their organization was up against was a true devil, and their identity remained unknown. Almost everyone who had seen his face had died. The only way was to find Dimi and bring him back for questioning. Another boss sent men to track down Dimi. He arrived at the bar where Petro was high on drugs. One of the henchmen pulled out a gun and fired into the air, causing everyone to fall to the ground in fear. The bald man stepped forward, intending to deliver a fatal blow. Petro's announcement that his father had been murdered filled Dimi with remorse. However, he angrily questioned why no one had told him sooner. The bald man pulled out a photo of Leavonne and pressed him for details. But Leavonne said they had only done business a few times and didn't know much about him. He only knew that the man called himself William. Petro knew that was Leavonne's fake identity. But based on the photo on Leavonne's fake driver's license, the underground sorcerers were able to uncover Leavonne's true identity. He was a former soldier. They even tracked down the address of his father-in-law and daughter. At this time, Leavonne's father-in-law was still practicing yoga, unaware of the impending danger. Only when he discovered the stranger with a gun in the house did he panic and realize he was in danger. Because Lily's grandfather hadn't come to pick her up that day, the teacher contacted Leavonne to have him take her home. Realizing something was wrong, the two children rushed to their father's house. When they arrived, the house was engulfed in flames. Despite their strained relationship, Leavonne rushed in to save his father-in-law. He feared Lily would be devastated if her grandfather died. Amidst the thick smoke, Leavonne carried him out. After being rescued, his father's attitude towards Leavonne softened considerably. For the first time since Meredith's death, the two were able to talk normally. Fearing Lily might be harmed, Leavonne left her at Dante's house. Seeing Leavonne leave his daughter there, Dante knew the situation was far more complicated. Dante took Leavonne to the Roses room, place filled with deadly weapons, yet bearing a rather beautiful name. Dante was a sniper, so his house contained many types of long-barreled guns with extremely powerful destructive force. After gathering the necessary weapons, Leavonne got into his car and prepared to leave. Before leaving, Leavonne promised Lily that he would soon return to pick her up. To reassure her, he gave her a military insignia and said that he would definitely return safely to see her. The two embraced each other affectionately. Under the setting sun, the father-daughter bond between them was even more touching. After receiving orders from Dimi to deal with Jenny, they tied her up in a car and drove to a forest. Jenny was an extremely strong girl. Even though the woman in front threatened her with a gun, Jenny was not afraid. Taking advantage of the woman's distraction, Jenny quickly kicked her arm. The car swerved and crashed into a bush. Jenny quickly broke open the car door and escaped. When she reached the main road, she encountered a patrolling police car and asked for their help. However, the police there had all been bribed. They took her to an abandoned house and handed her over to the two men from before. They were pushing her into a puddle of water, about to shoot, when suddenly the man's phone rang. It turned out that the the billionaire from before had called and demanded that Jenny be brought back alive and well. Luckily for her, at least she could live a little longer until someone came to rescue her. At this moment, Leavonne sneaked into Demi's nightclub. He was counting his earnings, so he only left a few bodyguards on guard. In the darkness, Leavonne slit the throat of one of the guards near the stairs. Then Leavonne slit the throat of another. Before the man could even scream, Leavonne stabbed him multiple times, killing silently in an instant. Only a former top-tier special forces operative like him could do that. Another group of guards rushed out to surround Leavonne, but he threw a bomb to distract them. He took down each one in turn. Just as an AK rifle fired at Leavonne, he killed the gunman. Demi, terrified, hid under a table. He took the gun and held the woman beside Leavonne hostage to threaten him. Because Demi thought Leavonne was a hero, he wouldn't want to harm someone else's daughter. Demi even offered Leavonne money if he gave up his revenge, but Leavonne firmly refused. What Leavonne needed was justice and the safety of his loved ones. No sooner had he finished speaking than Leavonne shot Demi through the arm, creating a large hole. Leavonne took out a picture of Jenny and asked Demi about her whereabouts. But he was just like his father, treating women like worthless trash. He even found it ridiculous that Leavonne had killed so many people and gone to so much trouble just to save a useless girl. After Demi revealed Jenny's whereabouts, Leavonne dragged him along to prevent him from giving the wrong address. In the car, Leavonne asked Demi about the identity of the man who had taken the pictures of the girls. He said that the man had moved to the nightclub, specializing in taking pictures of beautiful girls and sending them to a group chat. This place was full of billionaire playboys. They liked beautiful girls. If they liked someone, Demi would kidnap them to serve these billionaires. He still couldn't understand why Leavonne would hunt down an entire group just for one girl. Leavonne replied, "Do you have a daughter yet? Then you'll understand the pain of a father when his child is in danger." Of course, Demi didn't understand. Leavonne pushed him out of the car and sent him to hell to meet his father. The place Demi took Leavonne to was a club for the wealthy. They gathered there to gamble and engage in prostitution. A female employee approached the bald man and informed him that Demi was waiting for him to deal with her. When she asked why he was holding her, he only laughed lewdly. He picked up a knife, intending to torture her. Suddenly, there was a large explosion outside, causing everyone to panic. It turned out Leavonne had thrown a grenade at the guards, blowing up the hallway. The wealthy people inside fled for their lives. He broke down the door and shot one man standing on the stairs. Several others also met their fate under his gunfire. The black man couldn't contact Demi, so they knew something was wrong. Therefore, they sent a team to search the billionaire's club. By the time they arrived, the crowd had already scattered and fled in panic. The black man ordered a motorcyclist to charge straight inside. Several others followed, but Leavonne shot them down without missing a single shot. The motorcyclist was hit, causing his bike to crash into the wall and explode. In the basement, Jenny screamed to let Leavonne know where she was being held, but a woman covered her mouth. As Leavonne tried to reach Jenny, he was ambushed from behind by the black man. Leavonne quickly blocked him, using the butt of his rifle to forcefully bend the man's arm down onto the table. Then Leavonne pulled out a knife and stabbed him in the back. At the same time, the black man entered and, without hesitation, shot the black-bearded man who was shielding Leavonne. Thanks to his large size, the man managed to knock Leavonne to the floor. But Leavonne, with the agility of a former soldier, dodged a fatal punch. The two sides lunged at each other. Leavonne used scissors to slash a deep gash in the black man's arm, causing him to scream in pain. Leavonne then kicked him hard against the wall and stabbed him in the neck, killing him instantly with his eyes wide open. Leavonne took off his hat as a tribute because, after all, the black man had once served his country like Leavonne. But he had become corrupt, so Leavonne had to let him go. Leavonne replaced his magazine and went upstairs to the second floor. He opened the door and saw the perverted billionaire. Without hesitation, Leavonne shot him, sending him flying into the pool behind him. His two henchmen panicked and fired at Leavonne, but their bullets missed. When the other man ran out of ammunition, Leavonne advanced and punched him straight in the face. At the same time, Jenny bit hard on the hand of the woman restraining her and kicked the gun away. Jenny kicked her in the stomach for daring to torture and kidnap Jenny for the past few days. Then Jenny jumped up and put a chokehold on the woman, preventing her from resisting. At this point, Leavonne pinned the man's neck against the edge of the pool and sawed him to death. His face contorted with pain and foam frothed from his mouth. Only after Leavonne confirmed that both men were dead did he leave. He used a hammer to break the handcuffs on Jenny and led her to safety. Outside the house, the gang's rescue force, led by the bald man, entered. The long-haired man frantically fired at the police car, causing it to burst into flames. At that moment, the bald man spotted Leavonne coming out and shot at the wooden barrier, causing it to fall. His intention was to prevent Leavonne from escaping. Leavonne used an infrared detector to pinpoint his target and aimed directly at the chest of one of the men, piercing him through the body. The accomplice, terrified by the sudden death of his comrade, hid under a table. Leavonne pulled out out a grenade and threw it at him. Still struggling with his jammed gun, he was unaware of his impending death. He exploded and burst into flames. Before Jenny could escape this hellish place, she turned back. She gave the middle finger to all the corpses in the room. The two left on a motorcycle, unaware that the gangster Petro was watching. He called the organization to report the situation. They told him to let Leavonne go. However, Petro was furious and said that Leavonne had killed his children and grandchildren, but the gang leader said he would be killed because Leavonne was not someone he could mess with. Petro screamed in anger and pain. Leavonne brought Jenny home, covered in dirt. Just as the family was bracing themselves for the worst, they rushed to embrace their daughter. Overwhelmed with joy at seeing her safe and sound, Jenny's mother hugged Leavonne and thanked him for saving her daughter and for bringing hope to the family. Now it was time for him to go pick up his own little daughter from his friend Dante's house. As Leavonne sat beside Lily and his two good friends, he was just a father, an ordinary man wishing for moments of happiness with them. The scene ends on a warm note, as if dispelling the pain of the killing that just occurred. The film ends here. Goodbye, and see you again.